everyone, welcome to Watch It Paint It. In today's video we are going to be painting a model from Wild Assent, new game. It's about to launch on Kickstarter in about 2 days time. This is by Lazy Squire Games, and these models that I'm going to be painting are prototypes, so just be warned, they may or may not change during the course of the Kickstarter. So I thought I'd start by showing you the 3 models that I got. This is the smallest one, some sort of tentacle creature. So the guys there have sent 3 models, and I'm going to start with this tiny one just because of the sheer size. It's going to be reasonably quick to get through, and I thought I'd show you them just close up so you can get a feel for them. You might not have heard of this game, you might not have seen these models, so you can let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see the other 2 painted. So this is how he came. I've given them a wash. They had residue on them, so I've cleaned them up just in case the paint didn't take. So I've shown you the back there. This guy is some sort of lava monster. He's really small, and I personally think he's going to be quite difficult to paint with the sort of lava running between those rocky skin modules, I guess you could call them. So pause on that one. I think that one's probably the hardest of the 3 that I've got, but you could also look the coolest. And then the largest one's the last one. It's this little fella, and even this one, he's pretty big, but these models have got some insane detail level, and he's not going to be that easy to paint in itself. But, you know, as I said, let me know in the comments below if you would like to see some more of these painted up, and let's apply some paint. So the model I'm going to start with is that little tentacle creature. That's called a Waterbound, and that belongs to this guy, which is a stream caller. So they're like the spawn of this guy. So I don't have any artwork at the moment. It doesn't exist. So I'm just sort of basing it on what it spawns from, and, you know, going a bit rogue, painting it as I want, I guess. So I'm starting off with I'm going to use some colours I don't use on the channel, so you can maybe get to see some colours you're not familiar with, sort of thing. So we'll start with foul green. I'm going to be using, this is a small model, so I'm going to be using my Rosemary & Co. 3/0 brush basically for the whole model, I think. Oh, well, apologies, I'll go down to my insane detail brush as well, but the majority of it is going to be this small brush to begin with. So I'm going to use this foul green. I'm just going to apply it. Hopefully you can see it's fairly watered down. It's quite liquidy as I'm applying this. I'm going to build this up in a couple of coats, but I'm going to apply that to all of his tentacles. Then next I'm going to use Vallejo's Turquoise, and I'm going to be painting on his belly in this colour, as I'm sort of matching that stream caller that I showed you in the artwork, just trying to tie him. He was all bluey and greeny, so I'm making the spawn look a little bit like him. And then it's going to be Squid Pink, and I'm just going to paint the inside of his mouth, and this is going to look a little bit crazy, a bit clown-like at this point. These colours are ridiculously bright, but don't forget I will be having that wash stage where I really tone these colours down, especially the paint coat. That's basically it's going to be nothing like that by the end, but starting it bright just to make it look more like a mouth, I guess. And, you know, some creatures under the sea are crazy bright colours, so it's definitely artistic license here, and I think it could look quite different to a lot of things I've painted. So Bonewhite, that's by Vallejo again, and that's going to be for all of his suction cups. I'm going to paint them all this sort of pale, just off white colour, as I'm just imagining what an octopus would look like, and, you know, think that's the sort of suction cupsy colours that I'd have. Now I'm using Vallejo's game colour range here, so this can be used as a primer and the base coat in one, as I've mentioned loads and loads of times. So I've skipped priming this. The detail was just so small, so I felt like if I could, especially on this tutorial, skip the primer. I'm just going to keep in as much detail as I can with that one less layer of paint. And then, as I said, the game colour works as a primer. It sticks to anything. That's what it says on the tin. I'm yet to try it on anything, but it does stick to this very well, so there's no real issue there. Then on the sort of shell that I'm painting here, this is Vallejo's Pale Flesh, which is a very light pinky colour, and I've mixed that in with Vallejo's Metal Medium. You might have seen me use that a few times on the channel. It gives a sparkle effect, a metallic effect to the colour you mix it with. So I've mixed those 50-50, and I've mixed them for a good minute, get them really well mixed together. Then I've just applied that all down his back, all to that shelly, tough area. I'm just trying to make it look a bit, you know, I looked at some shells on Google. They're a bit pale, they're a bit sparkly, so that's the sort of effect I'm going for there. And then copying that stream caller's fin, it's quite a bright electric-y blue, and I'm doing exactly the same on this Waterbound spawn thingamajig. I don't know anything about the game. Does anyone know anything about the game? I'm not planning to back it yet, but I'm certainly going to be looking at it once it's released on Kickstarter have a good think about it. So if you're already up on it, let me know in the comments below what you think. Desert yellow I'm going to use for that sort of sand sea base. Again, I don't even know where this spawns. What's it spawning on? Is this sand? Is it, does it make sense? Is he still at the bottom of the ocean? Should this be dirt? So again, once there's some artwork out, once there's some sort of context behind these creatures and sort of can get a feel for where they're stood, what they're doing, I think you can choose the base differently, but sand's probably not a bad guess. He stood on some wooden planks, so charred brown, painting it like some wooden planks. I'm not going to shade those, so I'm going with the darkest brown I have, and I lighten them up from there. I'm just avoiding washes in some places where it can be avoided. Again, the level of detail, it's very, very fine detail, just dodging another layer of paint, really, by doing that. Necromancer Cloak is going to be for the rock, just painting that really, really dark grey. Again, I'm going to be able to dodge washing that, and I'm just going to lighten that up from the sort of darkest paint I would be using. I'm going to use dark green for these seaweed. See, like I said, I don't know what he stood on. That could just be tufts of grass, and he stood in some dirt somewhere. But I'm going for seaweed. He's at the beach, under the sea, maybe. I'm sure we'll find out in a couple of days, but I'm going for dark green there. And then we are going to be on the wash stage. So I'm going to use blue tone. I'm going to use that all over that turquoise and electric blue that I put on his tail fin at the back. And that's going to really, really start making the details. He's got a lot of detailing around his face, and it's going to really make them pop back out. Along his tummy, it's just going to really flow to sort of down the sides and make that look more shaded like it should do. And on his fin, it's going to make each one of those individual, what do you call them, like fins, the individual fins. It's going to make all the detail pop back out and just make that look so much more interesting, so much better. I'm going to use Jumpsuit Shader, the red shader, the Army Painter shader that I use, just flood his mouth with that, really, really darken that down. And then I'm going to use light tone, the lightest shade that I've got. I'll have added a touch of water to this as well, because I really just wanted to make his shell just look just Google some pictures of seashell. You probably know what they look like, but this is certainly one sort of seashell. These sorts of, it's really pale with some brown parts, and it's a bit sparkly as well. That's what I added that metal medium for. But I'm also going to use this light tone for all of his little suction cups all over his tentacles, make those, just darken them down a bit. So I'm going for that sort of yellow, bony colour of suction cups, which, just reminds me of a squid, right? So I think that's pretty fitting. So I'm going with that. And just because I've got some of this light tone out, I'll just I'll flood the base with it as well, and just make that desert yellow, just where there's some cracks running through the base, just to bring those details out and just make that look a little bit more realistic, a little bit more interesting, bring a bit of colour to it. Lots of tentacles there, so make sure you go around and round and catch them all. And then I'm going to use Plague Shader. That's one of the Army Painter's green washes that I have, that I got in that Black Plague set. And I'm going to be doing the back of all these tentacles, where I painted that foul green at the beginning, and just letting this flow, sort of trying to flow it into the shadowy areas, the backs of these tentacles, away from the raised center part, which I'm going to be highlighting up anyway. I'm going to start highlighting up the turquoise. In the center of the model, it's the hardest bit to reach, so I'll just get there first. So if I catch anything, I can, paint those colors back in on the other parts afterwards. So I'm going to paint a nice bright line down his tummy and blending that towards the sides a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, his face has got all these lines across it, all these little details, and I'm just painting the edge, highlighting really all of those. Then I'm going to use Toxic Boils Army Painter's much darker pink that I normally use for tongues and stuff. But as I mentioned, I use those Valleos as the primer as well, so that's a very good reason that I've used that brighter one on his mouth, knowing I would be darkening it down, but also I can just use that game colour as a primer. Army Painters won't stick in the same way, so that's a good reason to change between them. But once I was highlighting it up, I did want it much darker, like that Toxic Boils pink that I would normally paint the inside of mouths with. And then I'm going to use some more Bonewhite. I'm going to go painstakingly around every single suction cup on every single tentacle. I'm going to use my insane detail brush, just getting a little bit of paint, do a circle, another little bit of paint, do a circle, go round and round and round and round, and catch all the edges with his teeth as well. I did his teeth in the same colour. I think I forgot to mention that, but they're Bonewhite by Vallejo as well. Just letting you have a look how he's coming along at this point before I ruin it. You never know when I'm going to ruin it, or you might already think I have ruined it. Either way, giving you a little glance at it so far. foul greens back out. Insane detail brush by the army painter. Getting quite a loaded brush, but it's tiny anyway. It's like a few bristles, right? So as loaded as I want it to be, it's not that much paint. And I'm going to be going along foul greening the very sort of on the back of every tentacle. It goes to a point. It raises up. And I'm just going to paint all the way along every single point and blend it ever so slightly. This is very watered down. That's why the brush looks so loaded. I'm just going to blend that and make those look as realistic as I can. And then I've got some Turquoise by Watercolors. I got this in one of those model boxes that I get. You know, they send a couple of paints every time. And I'm just trying that out this, and it's a really, really nice bright highlight for that. So I'm painting the tips of every tentacle with that and just catching down the very, very edge of each tentacle, the very most raised bit on the back. And then I'm going to use electric blue and this insane detail brush and catch the turquoise area down his belly and a few of the little bits around his face. And then going to go along each of those fins, each of those flakes. What are they called? You know, each one of every ridge across his fin, and there's a lot, and it's going to take a while, but just very, very carefully edge highlight every single pointy edge on his fin, and that's going to really make that pop back out. I'm going to mix up the same mixture for his shell, that pale flesh, 50-50 with the metal medium, both by Vallejo, and I'm just going to very, very carefully go around and fill in the middle of every single segment of his shell, leaving that shade, that wash in all the crevices, and it's just going to really stop that. The wash has brought out the details, and this is going to make it look nice and bright and match the rest of the model a little better again, and just help highlight it and just make it look more sort of 3D, as though the colors are popping out of the model. I mean, it is 3D, so to some extent you don't have to make it look 3D. It's doing that all by itself. That's the beauty of 3D objects. Next, I am going to use Claymore Blade, the Army Painter's one, brightest silver I've got. I'm just going to dab him in 2 eyes. He seems to have 2 eyes, and I felt like he can have big, pearly, scary silver eyes. Off camera, I'm going to add on a little tiny speck of white just to give some sort of like reflection of light. I'm also going to use that white now just to catch every edge of every tooth that he has. Just bring that to a nice, sharp, bright point, and that's going to give the impression that his teeth are a lot sort of pointier. Well, they are quite pointy, actually. You could lose a finger. No, you won't. But they're sharp enough. But that's going to add a nice point to it, make them look more realistic. Same on his shell, just those edges of each spine down the back. Just a dash of white on it. I'm going to use Desert Yellow just to go around his base and just highlight up all the bits between all the cracks. Just bring a little bit of that colour. Again, this model's going to be quite bright at the end, quite unusual for how I would normally paint models. So bringing the base out, just making the whole thing look brighter so the model doesn't quite stand out as ridiculously bright as it could against the sort of scenery that he stood on. So it's, you know, the whole model's bright. It's a bright sunny day. It's nice and cheerful. This monster, he's not here to cause pain and trouble. He's here to brighten up your day. He's in fancy dress or something. I'm going to use a little bit of earth, Vallejo's earth, and that's just to highlight up the edges of these wooden planks that he's sat on, broken, shipwrecked. I don't know, scenery, isn't it? And I'm just going to edge highlight that. I've hardly got any paint on that. I'm almost dry brushing it. And that's the model completely finished. It took me about an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, it's just small. There's not that much to him. Now, I'm not 100% sure I love how it comes out, but there's no artwork, so I can't really even criticize myself. Maybe that's exactly what he's supposed to look like. Maybe I just don't like bright colors. Well, I know I don't like bright colors. An argument my wife and I have many times about how I would paint every room in the house black, and she would like it to be a little bit more cheery, but that is how I painted it. So you've got some idea. Can't wait to see what the artwork actually looks like and how close or completely wrong I was. Let me know in the comments below if you're interested in this game, if you're going to be back in this game. Let me know anything about this game. Thank you all very much for watching, and if you'd like to see the other 2 painted, let me know. And I'll put a link in the description below to the Kickstarter so you can go check it out. Thanks again. What colour do you think the suction cups on an octopus are? What colour do you think an octopus's tongue is? I was beginning to question how much you actually know about marine biology. What colour would your spikes be if you were a spiky shell? If you were an octopus and you were sat on the floor, what colour would the floor be? I'm starting to feel a bit like you're not answering my questions.